Dark web users, was there ever a point in your use that you felt you were genuinely in danger? What happens? Story 1. Religious Silk Road and Cannabis Growers and Merchants Co-op user here. I used to get the stuff delivered to my dorm, but the package didn't come directly to my room. I had to go pick it up from my dorm building office. For my third or fourth order from Silk Road, I got an email saying that a package had arrived for me, but when I went to pick it up, I was told by an RA that my package was in the DOR's office. I was freaked out. I also, for some reason, was getting a lot of spam calls, which added to my anxiety. I was scared poopless. I didn't go to pick it up for like 4 days, and kept getting emails from the DOR to come pick it up. I didn't go because I thought it was a setup. But after a couple days, I said smurf it, because I had paid a lot of BTC for that order, so I went to pick it up. It was literally nothing. The people holding on to my order couldn't have been nicer. They couldn't give me a reason why that package was delivered there and not to my door. So I just ordered more. The package was usually delivered by USPS Priority, which is run by the federal government, and I went to a state university. So technically, the federal government transported illegal goods to the state government for me. Story 2. I own a fairly rare car that had a rare error code. I looked it up on Google, and there was only one other person on the carmakers forum that had the same error. And this guy took months and months going back and forth between car shops and the forum thread to try to get the issue fixed. Everyone on the forum was pitching in to try to help him, so I kept going through this long forum thread to try to figure out if he ever fixed it. And suddenly, there's no more replies from the guy. Everyone was scratching their heads for a while. We thought he had maybe gotten the issue fixed and didn't bother to update us on it. Then, one day, a news article popped up about a really rich guy who died in a Thai jail cell. And then we connected the two stories, and they matched up. The same make and model of the car in the news article matched up with his car. And they were both claiming to be in Thailand at the time. So what happened was that same guy who was still talking on the forums got raided by the Thai police around the same time he stopped replying to the forum. Turns out that he was running one of the biggest dark web marketplaces where drugs were being sold and exchanged. It had something like $1 million in revenue per day, and he was hiding out in Thailand while living in luxury. They found him dead in his jail cell a few days later. They claimed he died of his own hands. Story 3. Not really a dark web user, but I got doxxed by a neo-Nazi group on the dark web and ended up having to use the dark web to find the websites that had my information. Department of Homeland Security and the FBI showed up on my doorstep because they were threatening to send me letter bombs and send people to abduct and grape me. It was scary poop. They all fell off the face of the earth recently, so I'm just hoping the feds got to them. I elaborated more in the comments. Feel free to ask questions, but I might not give too much more information out. I don't want to be identified by anyone who's come across my docs or is associated with the group who did this in the first place. I've never really understood why people go to such great things to target people online who they don't even know. It just seems like such an utter waste of time. The world is full of better ways to fill your time than trying to scare the pants off a total stranger. Yet it seems to be the only way some people have of getting their rocks off. They deserve whatever consequences they got from it. If you're going to target others habitually, you're going to eventually wind up in the crosshairs yourself. Story 4. Every time, remember that the person you just bought drugs from knows, number 1, your address, 2, that you have drugs in your house, 3, there's probably evidence of dark web using your finances and your computer trash. They can rat you out with impunity just because they're feeling malevolent. They also could just get caught and be careless with destroying ex-customer information, so it hangs over my head to this day. Story 5. There's hitmen, human trafficking, and snuff films and such, but a vast majority of these sites are scams asking you to send them Bitcoin. A small portion of users on the dark web would be there for this sort of stuff. However, buying drugs online is quite popular and widespread. Single vendors can have $500,000 plus lifetime sales. It's quite safe to use. You use pretty good privacy to encrypt your address, so only the seller of the drugs has access to your private info. If your package is seized, law enforcement has no proof you ordered it unless they seize your computer and you have that information stored on it. You can use Tails/USB to avoid this. Even if your packages get seized, you'll often get a love letter saying what they seized, and there's no follow-up after that. Story 6. I actually learned how to access the dark web by listening to NPR. They had a segment where an author who was writing a book about it basically gave step-by-step instructions on how to do it. I did everything he said, and by golly, it worked. Truthfully, it was pretty underwhelming. Mostly just drugs and counterfeit items, passports, money, etc. I did find some weapons with the serial number scratched off, pistols and shotguns, but nothing that would start World War III. I also saw a couple ads for hitmen, but they seemed pretty hokey and were most likely undercover cops. I never felt in danger, but I've never gone back because there's nothing I really want from there. No government agents have kicked down my door either. Of course they haven't. Poking around and seeing what's there isn't enough to get you in serious trouble. It's when you're actually participating in it that you may be opening a can of worms. Some people have had pretty much no run-ins with law enforcement whatsoever. Other people had packages seized on their first go-around. It's also important to remember the story about the person who got doxxed. Some people out there are exceptionally malicious. If you're going to play around on their stomping grounds, don't draw too much attention to yourself. Story 7. I've used the dark web once or twice. Scariest thing was when my screen went black for a few moments and turned back on. Wasn't anything big, just my display cable freaking up, but it did give me the creeps. As for dark and disturbing poop, I've only found a list of random addresses. The dark web really has a lot of stigma associated with it. For the most part, it's just people curious about the dark web, or people trying to scam you or sell you drugs. You have to do a lot of looking to find the really freaked up stuff. You're more likely to find dark web type crap on Reddit or YouTube than the actual dark web. Story 8. The only real difference between the internet you and I are using right now and the dark web is that you need special software or configurations to access it. You have plenty of opportunities of finding bad poop on the regular web. With that in mind, I'd say that the regular web is more dangerous since it lulls you into a sense of security. I mean, most people these days have a significant amount of their personal information on there. The dark web, you're likely going to have a sense to be more anonymous. Personally, I just used it for playing a World of Warcraft private server back in the day, since the hosts didn't want to get a cease and desist from Blizzard. Story 9. Not dark web, but mid-90s web. I was 12, and obviously puberty was in control. This was chat room days. Kid I was acquainted with, an Eagle Scout nonetheless, had all these floppy, and I mean floppy discs, full of pornography images from some dude supposedly in Texas. Me and a few other friends were over puberty, so were eager to see the women. It soon took a quick turn with girls that were likely my age. I immediately noped the F out and never really talked to the kid again. But knowing the Boy Scouts, I wasn't getting involved. But I was like 13 and didn't even want to tell my mom I was interested in women. I regret that day a lot. I should have called the police. Sadly, I just compartmentalized it. 1996 was weird. That sounds pretty terrifying. Since the girls were OP's age, it might sound like there was technically nothing wrong with him seeing those images, except that we don't know who took them. People who make pictures and videos like that of children are some of the most disgusting people around. And it's true that in the 90s, you could come across that stuff when it wasn't what you were even looking for. The same thing happened on file-sharing platforms pretty frequently. Thankfully, the internet's done a better job at putting up barriers against that sort of thing for the most part. Story 10. The scariest moment for me was when I stumbled upon a creepy alternate reality game and thought it was something much more sinister, until I found out it was just an alternate reality game. The dark web isn't really that scary. It's been romanticized and exaggerated by creepypastas, TV shows, etc. I know stuff like the Red Room and CP exist on the dark web. It's just that it's not that common. Most are scams or require a membership. The common user won't find much, but you will find something really off-putting if you dig enough. Story 11. Be safe, boys and girls. Don't give out your information or communicate with others, and if you plan on purchasing anything, use the secure Linux OS like Tails. Use private keys, connect to public Wi-Fi spot, not your house, encrypt all messages, use multi-signature markets so your chances of losing your Bitcoin lessens, escrow preferably, never send your Bitcoins from a wallet attached to you directly to the seller. tumble your coins first, and when the package arrives, don't open it for a few days. A friend of mine gave me all this info and told me I should help you guys out. Story 12. You don't just stumble onto the scary parts of the dark web. You had to have been looking for something sinister if you happen to come across one of the sites. Even then, getting access to said sites isn't as easy, as most of them are invite-based. Most of it is just the normal internet with questionable forums, think 4chan but slightly worse, and petty drugs. It's very hard to reach the criminal parts of the dark web unless you have very specific URLs, and even then, the host has the option to deny you access. However, once you're in, it can become a slippery slope. This OP wants me to imagine something worse than 4chan, and I can't help but feel like he has greatly overestimated my power of imagination. Not only do I find it pretty hard to imagine something worse, but I'm almost positive that I don't really want to. I picture something like a site called Rotten that used to be really popular with edgy teenage boys several years ago. I won't go into the kind of stuff you found there, but let's just say the name was pretty well chosen. Story 13. I found a chat room advertised as True Free Speech Platform, all political opinions welcome to discussion. I thought I could go there to debate with Nazis who are willing to say whatever they want without repercussions. It was really just a place to post CP. Nothing but CP. Every user was sending links to 3 or 4 pictures at a time, or commenting on pictures the rest of them sent. There were dozens of users. I disconnected my laptop from the internet and deleted my Tor browser. Story 14. So I had ordered many times on the dark web, but one day I decided to place a rather large order of Ecstasy pills from Europe to the USA. I had a terrible feeling in my gut after the order was placed, and actually had some serious food poisoning or something that night. Cut 2 weeks later, I ended up getting arrested for the pills and entered into the worst time of my entire life. Story 15. I've never personally felt I was in actual danger, so to speak, since I take proper precautions. But early on, I did accidentally come across a site/forum while exploring that was filled with snuff photos of women people had assaulted and then knocked out or ended their life. Shut down my browser pretty quick after that, but felt uneasy for a long time after. This is pretty important for people to remember if they want to go poking around on there. I'm not here to lecture people who buy illicit substances. That's a choice that I imagine you made knowing there were potential consequences. But when you're just looking around to see what's out there, then you really should understand the types of things you might come across. If you aren't okay with potentially seeing them, which is a pretty good way to feel about it, then you're better off just sticking to the regular internet with everyone else. Story 16. I don't know if it was the dark web, but accidentally came across a website that was basically just Cornhub, but for gore. I saw a couple seconds of a man with his hands already chopped off, getting his face peeled off by some sort of cartel, and noped the F out. I had to take a break from the internet for a couple of days. Story 17. In college, some friends and I ordered 100 sheets of acid using Bitcoin to our college P.O. boxes. We got pretty terrified when it didn't arrive when it should have. We thought it was found by USPS, our own mail service, or the DEA. We were paranoid. Turns out they just shipped it later than they said. We got our 100 tabs, but that was a very stressful week and a half for all of us. Story 18. Not the modern dark web, but back in the days of Usenet, I posted some harsh criticism of alt-religion Scientology. The online threats were funny, but when I started getting death threats by mail, I backed the F off. I've actually heard this before. Don't mess with Scientologists. They apparently take what they do pretty seriously, and don't take criticism lightly. That's why I have absolutely nothing to say about them. And besides, getting into heated debates about religion online is kind of pointless anyway. No matter what side you're taking, I sincerely doubt that most people have ever actually changed another person's opinion. Story 19. I once bought a bit of weed, and I received a blackmail letter threatening me with awful things, like sending CP and calling the police if I didn't send 1 BTC, $1,000 at the time. I was scared poopless, but nothing ever happened. Always check the reviews before buying anything. Story 20. Everything feels government-owned. I used to frequent drug sites. They would go down for weeks at a time. then pop up again, have weird prices. Sellers were different. It made the dark web feel like a labyrinth more than a ruleless wasteland. Story 21. A friend of mine used to use Silk Road on the dark net when Bitcoin was $10 a pop. He placed at least 100 orders through it and never had any issues. It's a shame he didn't keep all the Bitcoin he bought, because he would have been a millionaire now. This almost hurts to read. I'm sure that at the time he only had that Bitcoin to buy substances in the first place. It's pretty much the main form of currency on that slice of the internet, whether you're buying something to smoke or if you're in the market for a small child. But if people had known how it would blow up, I have to imagine they would have held on to it for a lot longer. Story 22. The idea that the dark web is an extremely shocking and dangerous place is largely inaccurate. It's mostly weird libertarian blogs and very sterile Amazon-type websites for drugs, complete with reviews of different vendors. Story 23. My friends and I were once ordering some green off the dark web. On the way, we saw a dude selling cyanide. Don't ask me how I got it. Don't tell me what you'll use it for. Violation of either condition will void the sale. Story 24. Had a buddy who used to order weed. The distributor got busted, and the postal service let him know there was a suspicious package for him. He could either pick it up, or it would be destroyed. That sounds like a close call, but based on a few stories, it actually sounds fairly common. Just because something was shipped to you, I'm not sure if the postal service can actually prove you asked for it. Besides that, the truth is that most law enforcement doesn't actually want to arrest people who are largely minding their own business. If you're lucky enough to get a choice like this, make the choice that keeps your head down most effectively. Story 25. Webcam turned itself on once. That was scary. I immediately unplugged it in my network cable, ran 3 complete scans of my system for malware and viruses, found nothing. Hasn't happened since. Story 26. Accidentally stumbled upon some CP once. Noped out pretty fast, but was still worried for weeks the FBI would come after me. Drugs seized, paranoid months, nothing happened. Story 27. Don't frequent it a lot, but once I accidentally left my browser in full screen, and a stranger in a chat room asked me if my curved monitor was nice. Freaked me out a bit. It actually sounds like freaking you out was more or less their goal. Maybe they could see your browser. Maybe they just made a good guess. After all, curved monitors are a lot more popular now than they used to be. It's not the worst guess to make. Story 28. Came across a Chan-style site. Every post was about trains. Won't say I felt in danger, but I felt so out of the loop that I was missing something that I just got off. Story 29. One time I got twice the amount of drugs that I actually ordered. Was paranoid for about 2 hours, and then I just got really high, and it was fine. Story 30. I was trying to buy those super cool laser pointers, and I got a random message saying, "I know where you live." I noped out of that site straight away. Story 31. Dark web ain't scary, B. I once bought a big crate of cup noodles for a cheap price. I feel ripped off that there weren't more stories like this. Tell me how to afford the creepy stuff and get the cheap noodles. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is there such a thing as an expensive cup of noodles? This might have been something you could buy on the regular internet, but I fully intend to investigate at my earliest opportunity. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.